This is the Average Guy Network, and you have found Home Gadget Geeks, show number 172, recorded on June 19th, 2014. Here at Home Gadget Geeks, we cover all your favorite tech gadgets that find their way into your home. News, reviews, product updates, and conversation, all for the average tech guy. I'm your host, Jim Collison, broadcasting live from the AverageGuy.tv studios here in Bellevue, Nebraska. And we post the show each week with world-class show notes, and they're going to be really good. So you're going to want to go out to the show notes this week for sure. I already see a bunch of links that John's put out there out at the AverageGuy.tv. If you have questions, comments, or contributions, you can send those to us. A couple ways you can do that. Send me an email. Jim at theaverageguy.tv. You can find me on Twitter at jcollison, and I've amped up my Twitter activity a lot. So you might want to head out there and check that out. A lot of good stuff coming out of that. And now you can call in those questions, 402-478-8450. It'll go right. It's Google Voice, so just go right in. You can leave that message, and if it's related to what we're talking about, we will play it right here on the show. And now Home Gadget Geeks is a part of the Geeks Network. Find the links to this show and many other really good podcasts out at thegeeksnetwork.com. You can join us in chat, watch or listen live on YouTube, Spreaker, and now Mixlr. So any one of those services will have the live and the recorded version of this as well. And find all the navigation for everything you need out at theaverageguy.tv. All right, a cool show. I've been looking forward to this one for a while. I did some time. It sounds like I was in jail. I did some time at Infotech 2014, and I met John Nye at that Infotech session, and John and I got a chance to spend some time together, and when we got done with the interview, by the way, if you want to head out to theaverageguy.tv/Infotech 2014, all the videos we did of that are out there, and John is one of them. I said, hey, would you come on the podcast? And he said, absolutely. So John Nye, I said like Bill Nye, John
Yep.
Nye. John, welcome to the program. Glad to have you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And for all you who are wondering, I am sort of somehow in the tree related to Bill Nye. But I don't know him. He's never been to a family reunion, none of that good stuff. He's there, though.
All right, good enough, and hopefully your science might be a little bit better than his. And then, or maybe your technology.
Yeah.
And then all the way over to my left, and he's on a Home Gadget Geek. We haven't had great luck with Christian on the show, but I knew we were going to be talking about some hacking and some cybersecurity and those kinds of things. I wanted to have Christian on the program. So Christian, welcome back.
Thanks. Good to be here, and of course, good to be part of anything related to cyber conversation. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, I do want to mention, if you haven't subscribed to Cyber Frontiers, it is no longer coming through the Home Gadget Geek feed. So we did that for about.
You should have done that last week.
They should have, but not all of them have. So we're just reminding them to head out. If you haven't done that, head out to theaverageguy.tv. Everything you need to get subscribed, and you have to resubscribe. We're not going to put it in the Home Gadget Geek feed anymore. It will be its own separate feed that's out there, and so get subscribed to that. You might want to put that in iTunes, or you can subscribe to it on Stitcher. You can grab the RSS feed and put it in a podcatcher that you might use. Any of those kinds of things, you might want to get it. We just published Cyber Frontiers 4, and so if you haven't listened to that yet, guess what? You're missing it, and we would love to have you go out and get that listened to. And so however you do that, you guys are all very tech savvy. I know that. I never have to tell you what to do from a tech perspective. So just get it in your podcatcher of choice, or however you decide to do it, and listen to Cyber Frontiers number 4. Looking for your feedback on that. Christian and I continue to tweak the format of what we're doing there, and we had a very interesting guest, Mark Goldstein, on 4, and got about halfway through what we really wanted to talk about. We'll have Mark back to finish up the rest, but get that done as well. I also do want to remind you as well that Home Server Show Meetup is coming up if you're going to be in the Indianapolis area on September 20th. Love to have you come out. We get together for a meetup. It's great. We get about 50 guys together. Lots of tech on the weekend. $20 gets you in the door, and it's a great deal. I'll have the link in the show notes as well, and we'll talk about that here at the end. All right, John, I want to dig right in with you.
Sure.
Let's get to know you a little bit. Tell me a little bit about your background, what you're doing, what school you're going to, those kinds of things.
Okay. Well, I started off with the computer security side in the military. I was in the Army. So I got to be a security admin, security officer, all that fun stuff in the Army. And then have been working my way through the ranks. I worked at CSG for a while, worked at Qt for a while, and now I'm at First Data and I'm
All
a
those are local Omaha companies.
yeah,
I forgot to mention you're literally down the street. I mean, not
yes.
quite, but you're not far from me here in Omaha.
Very close, very close. And they're yeah, it's always funny because there's all these companies here in Omaha that are massive, Fortune 200 companies that nobody's ever heard of because they're not the kind that advertise. They're not like, like Google, nobody's ever heard of First Data, but First Data is like a Fortune 12 company or something. So,
Yeah, chances are your credit card is processed through First Data,
they
right?
said
Yeah,
some like $5 trillion in processing per year. So, yeah, most likely.
quite, quite a bit. Yep.
As I'm also in school. I'm in my final two semesters of college, getting my degree from Bellevue University in cybersecurity. And I've got a bunch of certifications. I'm an ethical hacker, certified ethical hacker. I've also got my EC Council certified security analyst, and I'm a licensed penetration tester, along with some other certs that aren't quite as relevant. But those are the majors right now that I have. And that is my job now, is I'm an ethical hacker. I do black box testing at First Data, so it's awesome. Great
Very
job.
cool.
Yep.
And you'll be wrapping up your bachelor's degree here in Bellevue this fall. Was that
Yep.
right?
November is actually my graduation.
In November, and then stay on for a master's program. I didn't
That's
realize
right.
that a master's program in
Yeah,
cybersecurity.
it's fairly new. And I talked to the dean, and he's like, "You're in," because I've gotten A's. So he's like, "Yeah, of course you're in." So I'm already in it. I'm already signed up, ready to go into the master's program and do independent study. That's the best part about it. Independent study is that's the reason to take a master's, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Get
yeah.
credit for doing fun
Sure.
stuff.
Yeah, and it's literally, I mean, Bellevue University is less than a mile from where I live,
Mhm.
so it's just down the street here. Kind of fun to talk about podcasting stuff that it's just very, very, very local. So good. So how long will it take you to finish the masters?
I think it's 18 to 24 months, depends
Okay.
how many classes I take at a time, but I'll probably knock it out as quick as I can.
Okay. Now you mentioned ethical hacker, and that
Mhm.
that always brings up for the average guy, right? You security guys, Christian, you probably know what that is, but for the average guy, kind of listening in, what does that mean? I mean, hacking has gotten kind of a negative connotation,
Sure.
although recently there's people who've turned that. Christian works for us at Gallup as a growth hacker, right?
Hmm.
That's kind of his position title. That's there, so that's positive. And there's life hacking and some of those kinds of things. So
True.
tell me what an ethical hacker is.
Sure. Yeah, the term hackers, it's gone through its phases over the years, everything from good to bad. And even now, with some of the things we've been hearing from that the government's doing, like the NSA and what have you, even those guys who are ethical hackers, we have trouble believing what they're doing is right too. It's actually a really tricky area, especially if you study anything with business ethics, to really think about, because what you're doing is exactly what the bad guys are doing. So I would go into a system and I would look for any sort of vulnerability I can take advantage of and hack that system, or social engineer people or whatever it takes. But the difference is that I'm doing it all with permission, and I always have a signed letter from somebody very high up in the company that's like on the desk next to me. So when somebody comes up to my desk and you're doing the wrong thing, I can show them this letter signed by an SVP or whoever it is.
Has that ever happened to you?
It's happened a couple times when I was in the Army. I had a couple times. In fact, one time the MPs came and everything. It was a ton of fun,
Wow.
and they had to call the colonel of the brigade, and he had to vouch for me, and they let me go. But yep, it's happened when I've done some stuff that and it. But the really tricky part too is, if I was a bad guy, if I was a black hat hacker, and I was trying to break into a company's systems, there'd be no limitations as to what I would use or leverage to get into that system. Well, as an ethical hacker, you have a lot of limitations. I can't, if you have a third party service, can't touch it unless they give me permission. Or if your DNS servers are hosted by Cox, I can't touch them because they're owned by Cox unless they give me permission, etc. So that actually, it's a good thing and a bad thing. I have to be very careful. I have to make sure an IP I look at belongs to the people I'm allowed to look at, and I have to make sure that I have permission to look at that system. I mean, it's very specific, and if you cross the wrong line, you could go to jail.
And what made you? I mean, what made you kind of end up in this role? I mean, certainly there's you know you're on the not the dark side, but you're on the light side. Light side doesn't sound as cool as the dark side
Yeah,
does, but
it's as close as you can get. Yeah.
yeah. What kind of path took you there?
Well, it's very cloak and dagger, and I always thought that that was cool. I mean, I remember there was a movie in the 80s called Cloak and Dagger that I thought was like the coolest movie ever. It was about some kid who, somehow ended up spying, and but really what it was for me is in the early 90s, I was, a young teenager. I got into this when we had 14.4 baud modems, and I found out you could war dial around town, which meant you just dialed numbers in sequence until you found one that was a computer, and then you could do things to it. And I was like, this is super cool. And then I figured out you could do all kinds of things, like get into the phone company and all this crazy cool stuff. And it was pretty much it from there. I was like, this is what I want to do. Of course, growing up, all through the 90s and even into the early 2000s, it really wasn't a job, to be an ethical hacker. It was kind of, there were some people that were doing it, but it certainly wasn't as big as it is now. So I actually said, well, I'm never going to be able to do that, and tried to be in a rock band for a few years. That never panned out to make me the $1 million I hoped for. So,
Now that's
so yeah.
two totally different careers, right?
Yeah.
Cybersecurity and defense and those kinds of things, or rock band.
But I think the hackers are the rock stars of the tech world, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. At
Yeah.
least I like to think that. Maybe I'm not, but I like to think it's so.
Yeah.
And so if I'm going to go tech, I might as well go the coolest route there is.
Sure, Christian. As you look at the program that you're in there at the University of Maryland, that's the term hacking is not really a word that we've used very much. Not for any reason. I just haven't heard it very much. So, how does that translate to the ACES program there at the University of Maryland?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not something that's part of the title itself, really, because it's more student culture at this point. So, yes, students are learning both offensive and defensive cybersecurity, and obviously, being an ethical hacker normally falls in the offensive cybersecurity zone. But those are just really the two groups that we keep it at from an academic perspective, because ultimately, with the program being interdisciplinary, not everyone is there to be a hacker. A lot of people are there to actually do things like become really successful business majors or IP lawyers that know cybersecurity really well. But for the computer science and the computer engineering majors and so forth, you have to keep it in the context of their major is still computer science and computer engineering. So even though we're in the ACES program and we're getting all these cybersecurity skills with the hope that we become cybersecurity professionals, it's not like there's a really like this component of, all ACES students are ethical hackers. We have students who have all the same certifications in ethical hacking and do this for a living and are paid very well to do it. But it's just not a term that's part of the kind of vocabulary list, but it's kind of more or less all the same things we're learning. So.
Okay. That's just funny. It was just an observation. We haven't, in all the conversations you and I have had. In fact,
right.
More of the conversations have been around the positive connotations of hacking. When we talk about some of the things lately, it's kind of how do you take something and make it better is I think is the way we've turned the hacking term into, if we talk about life hacking or in Christian's case, growth hacking. In taking advantage of what's out there and taking advantage of it, I guess, and making it better. I mean, that's maybe where the
absolutely
piece kind of comes into play.
And that makes sense.
Yeah, go ahead.
What I was going to say is, and he's right. And ethical hacker, that's the name of my certification. I mean, I put it in my tagline or my signature, but really, officially the title's security engineer too. And pen tests are what we do, or penetration tests. So, hacker is more a term that I think we use to label ourselves more so than professionally does it become a term. So I agree with Christian on that sense, and he's right on. And the offensive and defensive is another big difference there too. And I prefer to do offensive security, but I certainly have to understand defensive security on the same token. So.
Yeah. John, any advantages? You know, you guys often think about penetration testing or security testing from an enterprise standpoint. Of course, all of us guys, though, if you listen to the show, you generally probably are a little bit nerdy, and you've got probably kind of a home server setup and all those
Uh-huh.
things. How does that apply, or how do you think that applies to the home user? I mean, our demographic is these guys all have a bunch of equipment at home. They're, doing
Mhm.
all kinds of things with it. From what you know and what you're working with, do we have to be as crazy and worried about security as say a First Data or a Kiwit or
Well, certainly not that. No, I mean, a big company like that has a lot more to lose than you do. I mean, they get into your system, they're going to get, your bank account, and probably you have less than $100,000 in there, and they're going to get, you know, the stuff they would get, and plus banks work with you. The banks are the ones that are really going to lose out. Or your credit card gets stolen, your credit card company loses, not you. So there's that to think about. But what I do recommend, especially if somebody has anything other than just a couple of laptops and a Roku, then I would recommend at least putting some kind of firewall there. Maybe not trusting that Wi-Fi router that they provided you, or at least upping the security on it a little bit. Change the name, change the password, things along those lines. Really, that's pretty much enough. The sad state of things is if you're chosen to be attacked, if somebody decides that you are worth attacking, they're gonna get whatever they want.
yeah,
There's even at First Data, even anyone, any company, any person, if they choose to get you, they're gonna.
I think on Cyber Frontiers 4 when we were talking with Mark, I think that's the overwhelming theme that runs through security. If you get singled out, Christian, you can maybe talk a little bit about this. If you get singled out, there's not a lot you can do except maybe unplug your router, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of a lot of it. I always talk about surface area as key when talking about this. So, like really large companies, if you're going to go after a really large company, well, there's a really large surface area to go after. So you can be really persistent at it, and eventually something is going to shake out of the trees. I actually think that I don't refute the statement, but that statement becomes more difficult when you're talking about small mobile entities or
Hmm.
maybe just individual people who, they're running services on the internet and they're doing transactions, but they might not be as obvious as to where to find that surface area. You might know about a couple things that person is doing and servicing on the internet, but you might not have as clear of a picture as what you would when you just start, arbitrarily looking around at the large entities sitting on the internet. Um,
Hmm.
so I think there's a little bit of room for that, but yeah, by and large, and it really comes down to I think there's different degrees of kind of getting compromised or getting owned by someone in that regard. I think at a high level, everyone can pretty much everyone can uh, be a victim to a DDoS attack at this point. The companies that have a lot of money will be better at responding to it than the smaller businesses and the medium-sized businesses. But that's kind of like the entry level, haha, I got you, and then you kind of work your way up from there until you're talking, big breaches of intellectual property, personal data, the types of things that get identity stolen. So again, there's room for that, but yeah, by and large, and especially, um, I think it becomes more compounded if it's a group that decides to go after you as opposed to one person. So, if Anonymous decides that you're their next target, well, just go get a cup of coffee and sit back and watch because that's about all you want to do at that point, or unplug your router. But obviously, sub companies can't do that. So.
Sure. And that is a valid security protocol, right? Just unplug your router.
Sure.
They're not getting in, right? I mean, there's no way in at that point.
That's
Uh,
assuming you have nothing that's hosted online,
True,
like a
true.
Google Drive or something. So, but I
Right.
do I do agree with
Oh, true.
Christian. I do want to say that, and he's right. In attack surface is a big factor. So, if it's one person who has one Facebook account and shops on Amazon, they're going to be a whole heck of a lot harder to get than, a big company, a big Fortune 500 who has hundreds or thousands of web apps. That's where you're going to find all your really juicy stuff. So, absolutely agree. Yep.
John, let me switch a little bit on you because we talk a lot about it, and actually the last time I had Christian on, I think 2 podcasts ago, we talked a lot about that idea of surface area. So
Mm-hmm.
you can listen to that if you're a regular listener of Home Gadget Geeks. Go back and listen to Christian. The audio wasn't great, but you can get through it. It's okay. And we talk about that. John, you'd said something I'd never heard of before when last time you and I together. We talked about a Wi-Fi pineapple.
Oh yes.
That just sounds cool, and so there's probably a lot of people who haven't heard of that. So walk through what is that, what does it do, and why do you use it?
Sure. Well, the link to the website is in the show notes. It's just wifipineapple.com, and it's a great gadget. So it'd be great for this podcast. It's a hacking tool or a pen testing tool. It's really targeted to be that. It's just a really small box. It's basically a WRT Linux, really small version of Linux running on a very simple computer that has 2 Wi-Fi radios and an Ethernet jack, and you can use it to do all kinds of fun things to capture Wi-Fi signals in the air and be a man in the middle and read what people are doing, especially if it's an open Wi-Fi. You can use it. There's they call them infusions, but it's an app basically. So a Pineapple Infusion is their version of an app. They have one called Karma, and that one's really fun to use. That one you use to basically when you have a device, whether it's a computer or a mobile phone, whatever it is, if it connects to Wi-Fi, especially in multiple places, generally you click remember this Wi-Fi. Like remember my work Wi-Fi, remember home Wi-Fi, remember Starbucks Wi-Fi. Well, when you go into a new location, your phone will often send out these little beacons that say, hey, home Wi-Fi, are you here? Hey, Starbucks Wi-Fi, are you here? Well, what Karma does is it says, yes, I am. It doesn't matter what the name is. So if it's asking for home, it says I'm home. And it doesn't work 100% of the time. A lot of devices have started to put good checks and balances in place to avoid that. But it works surprisingly often. I went to that conference, hooked it up, had it on for about an hour, and had the whole 254 space of IP addresses were filled. And every time somebody dropped off, another person was on in a second. And this was not me attempting to force them. There was no deauth, which means I kicked them off the Wi-Fi they're on and forced them to connect to mine. This was just turning it on and letting them connect on their own, and it works. Take it to a mall, you'd be shocked.
I wonder if my phone, when you were over there, if my phone connected as
and it very well
those.
did. Yep,
Yeah.
I had it running.
Yeah.
So yep, and the next day too, and it just catches everyone.
Yeah, and so what does that get you? I mean, what's the my phone makes a connection to you,
Sure.
right? Say I authenticate for whatever reason,
Mm-hmm.
and I think you're a valid Wi-Fi spot.
Yep.
Right?
So you would have no idea, assuming I'm being malicious and just pushing you through to another Wi-Fi. You'd have no idea that this is another Wi-Fi. You'd think it's just whatever Starbucks Wi-Fi, and then every single packet that you ship off, if you go check your Gmail or your Facebook or shopping, whatever you're doing, every packet's passing through my Pineapple, and I'm logging it, capturing it, just like with Wireshark, except they have their own versions of apps in there, or Linux apps that'll capture it, Ettercap, things like that, and you just capture all the packets, and then I can look at them. And then you're like, well, what if it's got SSH on it, or SSL on it, I mean, because technically you're going to https.gmail.com. Well, there's ways around that as well. There's kind of a hack, and companies use this legitimately on their borders to check traffic, because as it stands right now, all your HTTPS traffic that's traveling within a company, they want to be able to see what you're doing and make sure you're not doing something you shouldn't be. Well, one way around that would be to use the HTTPS, use SSL on everything. Well, they've figured out a way to strip that SSL off and then redirect you to the HTTP site. So as the traffic is traveling through to my end, through my man in the middle, or to the edge of the network in a big corporation's case, it's not encrypted. Once it goes out of the network, it redirects to the HTTPS site. At that point, it becomes encrypted. So now I can see your Google, Gmail login. I can see your Facebook login, and Amazon capture your tokens and pretend I'm you. All kinds of fun stuff. It's almost limitless.
So why are those not illegal?
Why would they be illegal? I mean, they're just for penetration testing. It's 100% legit. But you're right, and there's a lot of people that will, moan about it. Because they're, oh, these are only good for hackers. They're only good for malicious use, but they're not. It's just like a lockpicking set. Sure, a criminal's going to buy a lockpicking set and they're going to use it to break into a house, but a locksmith is going to have a lockpicking set as well, and that's how you're going to get in your house when you get locked out. It's a similar kind of deal.
So let me ask you, typical user, I'm sure there's people who've purchased those. Those are not using them for ethical means like you do.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm on devices. I'm traveling around. I'm connecting to Wi-Fi. What do I need to do to make sure I'm not connecting to a Wi-Fi pineapple? I mean, or am I?
Well, don't connect to free Wi-Fi's for one. I mean, if you're in an airport and you see the free Wi-Fi and you don't want to pay for the AT&T Wi-Fi, but at the same time, I can call it ATT Wi-Fi, and so it's really tough. Your best bet is to get to one that requires a password, because then it's encrypted. If you know the password and you're getting on one along those lines, you're a lot safer. When you get on those open air ones, you don't even need to have this device. I can just be sitting in the room with a computer and capture all the packets that are going over the air. There's nothing that stops me from doing that, especially if they're unencrypted on open Wi-Fi. Really, your absolute best bet, the safest way to be, is to use a VPN if you're on a public Wi-Fi. So use something like ProXPN, and I believe they have a free option. There's other websites. There's tons of websites out there that do VPN, and if it's something you do a lot, buy an account on one of the websites like ProXPN, or if you do it once in a while, just find one. It's going to be slower, but it's going to be safer. Think about what you're doing. That's the big trick.
So really what you're recommending, right? Anytime you're out, you're connecting to a public Wi-Fi, regardless, and I think I've heard this before, VPN's the only way to go. You really need to create that tunnel or what have you. Don't just surf naked, so to speak.
Yeah,
that's exactly. Kind of surfing naked on a coral reef, right?
Exactly.
What you're doing.
It's not safe out there. Yep.
Yeah. Well, and I've heard that many times over and over and over again. I don't do a lot of public Wi-Fi stuff, but I do from time to time. I was just thinking the other day, I was at the airport, and it was kind of a weird situation. We were trying to get connected really quick, and I know Omaha has free Wi-Fi at the airport, right? They don't, and so we connected, and I also know it prompts me for, you should go to the page that says, hey, free Omaha, whatever, click this to accept the agreement. Is that the same thing? If I have to click to accept their agreement, is that the same thing as putting a username and password in? Or
no, and that does not mean it's encrypted. In fact, that's just called a captive portal. And so what that is just a built-in little web page in their router's web server, basically, and it just sends you to that, and it says, I agree, and that's it. Or now if it asks you for a password, even, often that password is like to their website, not necessarily to their router. So like AT&T's might let anybody connect, but won't let you get past that captive portal. The scary part is that it take me about 30 seconds to recreate that captive portal and put it on the pineapple. It's got another infusion.
Right.
Yep. So and I can just copy it, put it right on there. And what's really great with ones like AT&T or T-Mobile, or the ones that you pay for, is they will have a little box that says, please input your username and password. I love that, because now I have your username and password. And
so how do you know? I mean, as a user, if you're going to the AT&T one and you think it's AT&T, how do you know?
You don't. Hopefully it is. I mean, you can look for signs just like with phishing. You can look for signs, but usually they're just going to copy it exactly. Right. So you just have to really hope more than
anything. So if you say I sign into that, so I gave him my AT&T username and password, right? But I turn on VPN. Does that, at that point,
At that point you're good. Your data that you're transmitting is safe. So if you go to your bank account or something, they're not going to get that, but they did get your username and password in the initial login.
Or maybe you should put the wrong password in the first time automatically, just to make sure it fails. And if it doesn't, then you know. I mean,
there's actually some steps in. It was really odd in the CEH certification test where they talked about that. So you're in a place, you know that your password there could be a keylogger or something on your computer. How would you attempt to foil them? And there's things like that. So you could have your password in that case, you could have it in like a text document and copy and paste it, or you type it one letter, click to another screen, click another letter, or backspace, and so you can do things to make it confusing in their packet capture. But when they're capturing it in plain text, and in this case, they're going to get a packet, and the packet's going to have your password. Whereas a keylogger, you could kind of foil it, or at least make it confusing to the attacker. But with this, they're probably going to get it. And it's pretty hard to avoid, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I think one of the recommendations we heard, we've done a few of these security podcasts recently, is just don't do any mobile transactions.
Yeah, yes. Think about what you're doing.
Yeah, if you're going to go to your bank account, which is sometimes you need your banking information when you're on the run.
But you should have a phone with 4G. Most people do. So use your phone. Your 4G it's also hackable, but substantially more difficult and way less likely. You'd have to have somebody who really wants your stuff with a lot of money.
Turn off that Wi-Fi and
just use your 4G.
Christian Drashna was saying in chat that, of course, like 2012 Essentials has a built-in VPN to it or with it,
right.
and you could use, assuming you had a 2012 server up and running, which John, in most communities that wouldn't be the case except in ours.
Except here, yes. And you can easily set up an open VPN on your own server, absolutely, and then it's free. And that's a very good point. If you have a web server going, you're good.
So Christian, talk a little bit about, I think you guys are doing something similar to that. Is that right?
Yeah, so if you're setting up Server 2012 Essentials or anything like that, that uses a type of VPN that actually goes over an SSL connection. So it's considered kind of high availability because a lot of kind of public Wi-Fi's will either like whitelist a certain amount of websites or will like block you from connecting to any other ports other than like 80 and 443, right? So having it be on a standard port like that is cool because, yes, you're establishing a VPN connection over 443, but you're also running a web server over 443. So it's cool that you're getting kind of dual service communication off the same port. That's not too common. So that establishes a pretty secure connection, no problems there. The other thing you can do, which is relatively cheap to do, well, free really if you know what you're doing, is if you have a router and you don't feel like doing the whole web server or Server 2012 Essential setup, a lot of routers support VPN directly into your network, and if your particular firmware doesn't, chances are that there's a DDWORT firmware you can go out and flash that will let you do the Open VPN right on the router because it's really not that intensive of a service to run. So there's a lot of different ways you can do it. The VPN that comes in Essentials is nice because it's really easy to set up. The only thing I've noticed is that it will only do TCP only communication, whereas OpenVPN you can set up to do either TCP or UDP. So in some cases, if you're a gamer or if there's certain applications that require UDP that you want when you're in a VPN session, you're going to want to have to set up OpenVPN to do that because you won't get that. Those packets just won't be picked up in the network topology from Server Essentials. But all of the features of Windows from the Active Directory environment, login, and all of that, that's all TCP only based communication. So I actually have servers that I run remotely outside of our network that are tunneled and connected to the domain controller through that very SSL connection. So you can still do a lot with it.
I've got a 2012 Essentials instance running on Azure right now that I assume I could just create that as a VPN and go through my Azure instance?
Yeah, you could do that, and actually that would be interesting because you're basically an isolated tenant at that point. So you're VPNing into another isolated network, so it's kind of like two layers of security. It's interesting.
Interesting. John, any thoughts on that?
No,
Using
that's actually a great idea. And speaking of the open WRT that you can put on your routers, they're actually you can put the version from the Pineapple on there as well. And those are really good. You can do, like you said, OpenVPN. A lot higher level of security is available on there than the ones that come with your routers. And the ones that come with your routers are generally it's shipped with one, and generally, at least the cheap ones that you buy at the store, that's it. They don't ever upgrade it. And so it's sometimes you end up with some really bad holes in that security that just sit there. There's no forced upgrades. You might be able to upgrade it, but if you go to that WRT, I think it's DWRT, if I'm right, then
It's
you can,
DD yeah.
yeah, DDWRT, yep. And you get that, you put that on, and most routers will accept that, or at least any good one. ASUS in particular, I know, you put that in any of their routers. So that's good stuff.
I
But I
guess I
agree, the
also
VPN is great.
go ahead. I'm sorry, John. Sorry about
No, I agree with Christian on that too. That's 2012 is really good. You can add that VPN, OpenVPN, either one. That's a really good free way to go.
that. I may have to give that a try just to try it. I set up a 2012 instance. I guess last weekend, maybe 2 weekends ago, to do some testing with actually streaming our video for this program. I really wanted a separate server. Christian's good enough to host all the average guy stuff, but I didn't want to saddle them down with all the video resources, and so I was going to try and use Azure as just kind of a test host for streaming, so someone can RSS for the video, get it downloaded to their phone. But I didn't think, hey, wait a minute, I got a full server out there. I could use that as well. I also have pfSense here at the Average Guy.tv studios that runs out. I imagine I could turn the VPN on for pfSense and use that as well. Come back to my house.
You definitely could. pfSense is really good and secure as well.
Okay, good to know. By the chat rooms. Go ahead, Christian. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, it's open. They do the OpenVPN and pfSense too, so it's all the same thing.
True.
Yeah, I think it's something. I guess I've never been very serious about that, and much like my LastPass, which we're good friends with LastPass. We've had them on the show several times. Amber Gott is one of their marketing rep, and every time I have her on the program, she scares the crap out of me, and I think, okay, I'm going back. Everything's getting changed this weekend, and it usually takes me a while. Well, Heartbleed fixed that for me, so I really did go and change most everything. I've got some cleanup to do as well. Maybe this program will get me to quit using open access Wi-Fi and not just turn on a VPN. My work laptop does that automatically for me. So anytime I'm trying to access work stuff, in fact, we just loaded some new software today that will literally not allow me not to surf without a VPN, right? It has to. If I'm going to make the connection, VPN will be automatically turned on, which I think is a great consumer solution. Is anybody... Christian, John, you guys know, is any most consumer grade hardware isn't doing that at all, right? You're just in the blind?
Yeah, as far as I know, I'm sure that you could get, an add-on or something that would do that, but that's like the Cisco AnyConnect that you can set to be automatic. I know, or at least that's what I've seen used, and that is a good corporate solution for that. And corporations should absolutely force their users to use VPN when they're logged in to a Wi-Fi, especially. But consumer, I'm sure you could set it up, but I don't think by default.
I'm just thinking the average consumer does not have the wherewithal to think. I mean, VPN, that's not crossing. My wife has no idea what a VPN is.
Oh, mine either. I can't get her to put a pin on her phone.
Well, you can set up stuff like auto reconnect on the server essential stuff. That's not too hard to do. That's just an option.
Well, but that's Christian. That's something we have to do for them, right? I'm trying to think about the average person who doesn't have the tech guy in their life who's going to, take care of those things for them.
Yeah. I mean, it's really, I think, a checkbox, but I guess it's knowing where the checkbox is.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Where is that checkbox? What are you referring to?
In the network, actually, I might be lying. So I use a little utility called AnyConnect that automatically repicks up my VPN connection if it drops,
Mm-hmm.
and you just let it run in the tray. So that's like the one-click solution.
Mm-hmm.
The real like permanent persistent VPN is called the IPsec tunnel. And that's when you have it basically all IPsec does is it establishes a layer 2 connection from you to another. It basically makes a tunnel, layer 2 tunnel from you to the next network you want to enter into, and that is a persistent tunnel. So that route will always be active, no matter what you're doing. And then it's up to you to do layer 3, which is the IP addressing and the communication with the broadcast IP.
Mm-hmm.
So generally, that's going to be like a really unfeasible solution for the average guy because setting up IPsec tunnels are not straightforward. But along those lines, it's really simple to connect to Server Essentials and then start up that app that automatically says, oh, the VPN isn't on right now, let me turn it back on.
And when I connect to Server Essentials, I'd be putting a username and password in?
Yes. Well, yeah, you just save it in the config file that automatically goes when you connect it, I think.
Okay.
So you wouldn't
John,
be transmitting that over the air. And what he's talking about actually is that Cisco AnyConnect, which I believe is free for home use. And that's exactly it. So if you have a VPN set up at home, you can configure it for the AnyConnect app, and it runs in your tray, just like you said. And that's probably what you're using at work. That's what most corporations use, and it will just automatically connect you. And that is an option. So you could set that up. And you could probably do that with ProXPN or something. They probably have something along those lines too. I've never tried.
Okay. Well, you guys scared the crap out of me. I'm gonna.
That's what we do. All security's for.
I'm gonna take a serious look. I mean, it's one of those things that in my family, none of my boys have laptops. They do everything here. My daughter has a Surface tablet that she rarely uses it outside the house. My wife doesn't do anything outside the house either. It's primarily me. So that's one of those kinds of things. I've got a couple laptops with me that I use, either work or my own personal one that I use all over the place. And that's probably some really good security practice for me. Any VPN solutions for my phone if I'm surfing? Can I set up VPN to do the same thing?
All of those will work on your phone. There's options as far as I know. I know for Android, they've finally made it so you can get past it used to be just PPTP that you could use, which is kind of lower level, but now you can use virtually anything, and with iPhones as well. In fact, there's a Cisco AnyConnect client that is usually installed on the iPhones for corporations.
So say I set up a VPN on 2012 Essentials, I can connect to that with my phone and surf through that?
You should be able to, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the built-in client in Android, I want to say, is PPTP based, so you have to make sure that the remote access, when you set it up on the server side, has the PPTP port open, which you have to forward that in your router, whereas the remote access thing is already just coming over SSL, so it's like already done.
I think they changed it. Sorry to interrupt, but I'm pretty sure they changed it in 4.2, whatever the most recent one, so that now you can do SSL. So I could be wrong too, but I'm pretty sure they finally have fixed that because that's like a crazy, stupid thing for them to be doing.
Yeah, I'm on 4.3 right now. I think and they just pushed the 4.4 KitKat out for Sprint customers, so I'll have to play with that a little bit. Someone mentioned in chat that what about direct access, and that is totally out of the realm of the average guy as of this point. It's like extremely enterprise, and I doubt that very many enterprises are adopting direct access at this point, solely because it relies on you being an IPv6 guru and having a big slice of public IPv6s at this point. And the setup for it is definitely nowhere near what it is for just the regular remote access.
Absolutely.
Christian Direct Access is coming to an employer near you.
Oh gosh. Oh no.
We are implementing it.
Oh no.
Yeah, it's coming. So we've got some.
Everyone gets it.
Yeah, it's got it. It's we've had some challenges out of the gate. They just started rolling it out, so my laptop actually has that starting today. I upgraded to that today.
Oh,
Funny
fun.
that we would talk about that. That's weird.
Good luck, Jim. Good luck to you.
Serendipitous. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Yeah, it always hurts to be an early adopter, that kind of stuff. So we'll see how that
I'm
goes. All right,
just
go ahead,
real
John.
quick. I'm checking on my phone. I got the HTC One through Sprint. Actually, I'm seeing a choice for always on VPN. I doubt you guys could possibly see that. And then you can have the VPN profile, and you are allowed to pick IPsec, PPTP, L2TP, IPsec hybrid RSA. So you got a bunch of choices now. It's not
Yeah,
limited to
the
still
one you
all
need
PPTP.
for the one you need for remote access is SSTP. That's the one that goes over
hmm
SSL.
You're
So
right. And
yeah,
that's
you
still
got a
not
four
available
port.
on here. So
Right.
either you got to find an app, root it, or just
So
live with
not as easy for the average guy.
Nope.
Let's just say that. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
it does open a door for some discussion, and so I think a good one. We have never really talked about this kind of at this level here on this show. Certainly, all our gadgets when we talk about it. This is, I mean, for the listeners of this program, your phone, how you connect your laptop that's going out, your phone that's going out. Certainly, things we have to be thinking about. So it's one of those topics that, like for me, I'm like, all right, I better start thinking about this
hmm
and get this all straight. Because if I'm just starting to think about it, the average guy is still a ways away,
hmm
and so it's probably something we need to start thinking about. All right, very cool. Well, good. I know we started Wi-Fi Pineapple, which is just a cool name to begin with. I like
It
that name.
is.
We veered, but some really good conversation
Mm-hmm.
around that as well. All right, let's talk. Speaking of gadgets, Christian, anything else you want to add on that before I move away?
No, I'm good.
Okay, perfect. I want to talk a little bit about you had mentioned you and I were going, John. You and I were going over some topics to cover, and you were like, "Hey, you want to talk about quadcopters and drones?" And of course, every guy wants to talk about quadcopters and drones.
Absolutely.
So as you talk about, it's funny because we're all really familiar with drones.
hmm
Have been highlighted with all the military action, and I think about the drone technology as it's come in the last 10 years. Thanks
Sure.
to a small little conflict in the Middle East, drone funding went through the roof, and we have some
Mhm.
really good. The world has some really good drone equipment now.
Oh yeah.
Quadcopters have not. While I've watched some of our local kids here in the high schools and their tech programs build or mess with quadcopters, they haven't quite gotten the attention that I think maybe the drones have from that standpoint. So,
Sure. Sure.
talk a little bit about when you think about quadcopters. Tell me why that's hitting your radar.
Well, for one, they're just fun. It's a fun little hobby to play with. It's, I'm a tinker. I like to try new gadgets, so it's tons of fun in that sense. But even from a security sense, and actually something I'm working on as a research project is taking uh, actually a hexcopter in that case, but it's the same thing a quadcopter is, and setting it up to have a wireless, not wireless, like a 4G modem running on it, and Wi-Fi Pineapple, or a Raspberry Pi, which is a little tiny computer running Kali Linux, or really any kind of Linux, and then a really nice hefty Wi-Fi antenna, and then I can already automate it, so I can say I want you to go to this waypoint and stop. So I can send it to X point, like somebody's roof somewhere that's half a mile away, or 5 miles away if my battery will last that long. Uh, then I have a remote connection to do Wi-Fi fun from quite a distance. And really, if you start thinking about that, now criminals could take that a whole step further, and a guy in I don't know, in Russia could send a send it fully ready to go, quadcopter to a person here who's a go-between or whatever, give them $50 to put this drone outside. And that's all they got to do. It's already pre-programmed. They charge the battery and set it outside, and it takes off, goes where it needs to go. And now he's got a remote connection from the other side of the world to start hacking somebody's Wi-Fi. So it can, it can go a lot further. So you can even use it in a security sense. But in the sense I'm at right now, it's just fun to fly it. It's a ton of fun to tweak it. It's a
So
really fun
I'm
little play.
assuming you have one.
Yeah, I've got this guy right here, if you guys can see it.
Yeah.
This is the Aero Sky. So it's basically the cheapest, like, not toy version that you can buy. This is 250 bucks, and it's got everything you need. And I've tweaked it and added other parts, but this is the basis of it. And I mean, if you want to build one yourself, it costs nothing. This is a whole nother frame for another one that was literally $20. So you want to get started, go buy a frame, and each of the parts are really not that bad. The key motors, which are probably between 15 and 40 bucks, depending on how high quality you want to go. You can even go higher. Besides the motors, the real key is, and there's no way you're gonna be able to see it, but it's the computer. It's the flight controller that's in here. And this one came with a fairly cheap one, but I've already ordered. They have the multi-Wii ones that it's essentially an Arduino board. And if any of you've messed with Arduino, it's virtually limitless what you can do with that. And then on top of that, it's got a full programming language, and it's got a whole, you can run everything, have a control from your computer or your tablet or your phone and it'll show you the tilt, I'm trying to think of all the bunch of aero terms,
Aviation terms, right?
Aviation terms, but
Yeah.
you can look at all these different specs. It's got a whole bunch of sensors built into it, and then you go a step further and hook a GPS up to this guy, and now it does become autonomous because it can tell how high it is, it can tell how fast it's going, it can tell which direction it's going. It's got all this stuff. It's got a barometer, it's got the accelerometer, it's got the magnetic compass built in. So it's got all these sensors, so it can tell where it's going. Then you add a GPS, and now it can tell where it is to a T. And now I don't even need the radio. The radio is a big hunk, and I didn't bring it over here with me, but it's a big, huge, like an airplane radio. It's got 6 channels on it. But you can run it all by just turning it on, program in your waypoints, and let it go off and do its thing, and it'll just come home as long as the battery doesn't die.
Yeah, and how big is that battery? How long does it last under typical operation, at least in your
The
setup?
batteries, okay, the batteries are LiPo batteries, and if you start, they're called, what is it, lithium polymer. So if you start buying these kind of batteries, which any kind of RC generally uses, you'll see all kinds of wonderful warnings all over everything. They're really,
Are those the ones
they're
in a
not,
bag? The battery
they can
itself
be
in
in
a
a
bag?
bag. Yeah, this one here, for example, it's kind of in a bag, but it's solid. They do have the small ones almost are in like a bag.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that the chemicals in these, if you crash really good and it cracks open, the chemicals mixed together, it will start on fire. And it's one of those fires that's really, really, really hard to put out. So when you buy one, every battery you buy, every charger you buy comes with like a 3-page, like tiny point warnings everywhere. Don't charge it in a house. Charge it at least 10 feet from any building. Charge it on cement. Put it in a fireproof. They want, of course, they're trying to CYA for their own use,
Sure.
but yeah. So they're not very big. It probably weighs a few ounces. To be honest, I'd say this weighs about half as much as the actual quadcopter. But it's not a very big battery at all, and these are as light as they get. And a single battery, and these are the smaller ones, will last about 15 minutes of flight, somewhere in that range. So not very long. That's why I've got 3 of them, because if you want to go out for an afternoon, you can be charging one while you're using the next one, but they take about half an hour, 45 minutes to charge. So it's that's part of the challenge. And the bag that they're in is actually like a Kevlar bag. It was cheap. They're like $8, but they actually make these special bags that are supposed to block the fire. So
Right.
they're
Yeah.
dangerous. They all say 14 and up. These blades that are on these things, when it gets spinning, I mean, they're going hundreds of RPMs. And even though they're kind of flexible, you can bend them, they hurt. You don't want to touch them, even when it's in idle and they're just spinning fairly slow. These little motors, the motors that run these, same motor that you would see in like the RC cars that people had, especially a lot, about 10 years ago or so. See them going down the road, like 35 miles an hour. Well, this is the motor they had in there. You got 4 of them. So that's why it doesn't last very long, because you got 4 pretty powerful motors running. But on top of that, they're running fast. So you got to be careful.
John, it's not like we just invented propellers. And
Certainly.
so, I think we've had the technology for a long time to be able to do these kinds of the flying devices, these quadcopters before. Why now? Why have they become so,
I think it's just kind of an idea somebody had. I mean, the radio control airplanes have been big for many years.
right.
Radio control helicopters kind of toward the mid 90s started kind of popping into the scene. You'd see those if you go to one of the RC flying places. There's one here in Omaha where they have a huge, scale airport, basically. It's got a full runway for people to take off their jets. And you'll see the little helicopters. And then I think maybe 5, 6 years ago, all of a sudden there was all those little mini helicopters that everyone had that you charged from they were really tiny, and everybody had them like in every office that I went to, and they were flying around to each other and battling in the air. And I think it just was a natural progression to move on to this. But to be honest, I'm not sure on the 100% where they came from. I think it was a little mix of people trying new things. It's also tricky to run a single helicopter. You have what's called like a gyro that helps to balance, and it actually turns the wings, and so that's it's a mechanically, and it works off of kind of physics to be intelligent in a way, to move in the way that it needs. Well, when you got something like this with 4 rotors going and you want to go forward or you want to go sideways, you could not do that. Like physically, you couldn't move fast enough. Quite literally, your fingers can't move fast enough. Even the fastest jet pilots who are trained to have really fast reaction times couldn't react fast enough. So that's where these flight controllers come in. And I think that was really the big kind of sticking point and what it waited for, because now, because of our phones, we've got extremely tiny compasses that are cheap. We've got really tiny accelerometers that are cheap. And in fact, the very first ones of these, the flight controllers, were a hacked Wii controller, because those have the accelerometers, and that's actually where the name multi-Wii comes from, and that's one of the most popular types of flight controllers. So I guess that's probably what caused it.
So maybe the gear getting small enough, those flight controllers getting small enough to be able to do that stability. 'Cause that's what's really key, right? What you're saying is to keep those things stable takes quite a bit of effort, and you have to the computer does it for you.
Yep. All you're doing is saying go this way, and the computer goes, okay, if I want to go that way, I need to change the RPMs on these 2 to this speed, and this one up to this speed, and so it's got a lot of logic in it.
A lot of things it has to do or be thinking about. We, I do a lot of college work. We go to a lot of college courses, hire college folks, and I do a lot of engineering fairs where we judge, and that seems to be in the computer science or computer engineering, that quadcopter has shown up and is showing up more and more in these guys' projects, just because it's pretty cool.
It's fun. And it's yep.
Well, especially in the farming communities, they become really popular because they can, they put cameras on them, and then those things fly over large farms, and farmers can quickly send those out, based on a report or whatever, if they want to go check on a certain, each part of the farm has a waypoint, and so the farmer can put in the waypoint and send the copter out to take a quick peek at what's going on out there, or what. So and
for $250, that's just too good. I mean, and they can build dozens of them, put a few cameras on them, and just have them. And for a farmer, that's not very much. A big farm, you're talking millions of dollars in crops. Right. It's worth it to have this kind of protection and save the time and money that it costs to send their farmhand out or to drive out there themselves.
Yeah. Very practical too. I would think in weather, in weather chasing, which has been a big deal here in Nebraska for you and I over the last couple of days. I've never seen so many of my friends get interested. We had a dual tornado, which just doesn't happen very often. In fact, in the 22 years I've lived in Nebraska, I've never seen a dual tornado come down. Just wiped it out. I mean, just wiped it out. It's horrific. But so there's been a lot of talk of weather spotting and weather chasing and what storm chasers over the last couple weeks as that happened. But you would think with all that control, you might get one of these heavier quadcopters that could go up there and get some good metrics without. And if you lose it, you're out maybe $10,000 instead of a life.
Yeah,
Christian,
exactly.
let me ask you, in what you guys are talking about in your program and that stuff, has any of this come up as far as surveillance, drone, these kinds of discussion in what you're doing?
Yeah, we've had several major topics about it in our privacy honor seminar in the spring, and we had some guys come in and talk about it too. And I mean, everything from there are drones that are delivering beer straight to people's homes. That has been on and off again. The big thing, though, has been the FAA. The FAA has had serious problems trying to figure out how to properly regulate drones within the airspace. And so that's been a major problem for people because, a lot of companies, Amazon, so forth, put in a lot of initial dollars investing these when there weren't laws and regulations, and now they're starting to come into place, and there's a lot of middle ground still left to be figured out. Obviously the surveillance aspect of it and just the amount of data you can get off these things is really incredible. So lots being looked at with that, but we've also already seen a couple close calls with drones almost taking out planes in the airspace. So the FAA really has a handful with figuring out where drones fall into the picture. But I mean, I think it's clear that this is a wave technology, in my opinion, so I think it's going to get us from a point A to point B, so to speak, where a lot of the things that we do delivery-wise and so forth are going to become a lot cheaper to ship and to manage locally because we have these units available. And I think it'll propel the longer-term technology of where we're going with transportation, mobility, and resources. Very similar with this notion of encrypted currency and really just kind of making the stuff that we do now seem silly. I think drones will have a similar impact.
Yeah, I don't disagree, and I actually think we often think of a long-term or long-distance drone delivery, and I think that's not a very practical model. John, you're just saying the battery doesn't last very long, but distribution points still stay the same. And when we talk about drones, we also have to talk about self-driving vehicles, which we've talked about here a couple shows back. We had when we had the Bills on the program 3 or 4 weeks ago. Talked about self-driving cars. One of the Walmart or somebody, I saw this on Google Plus the other day, is testing these self-driving semis. And so drone, you talk about trucking drone delivery to be able to move product across the ground to get it to a local distribution center. And then, we might have 2 or 3 drone distribution centers here in the city of Omaha. And they'd get there, a robot would pick those off the truck, put them on a landing, in a landing spot, a drone would pick that up and zip that out, right? I mean,
really.
Oh, go ahead, John.
Well, I was just going to say, so you start talking about drones, and really you've got that really starts to open up a lot broader of a topic in the sense that, people tend to call this a drone, but technically this isn't. It's run by a radio. Now, when I hook up my GPS and I set it to waypoints, now it becomes an autonomous vehicle or a drone. So if you start thinking about companies like Amazon, if you have ever seen any video of their like distribution centers where they actually package their stuff, there's large portions of these centers that are run by essentially drones. They're little robots that go around and pick up the card that has whatever package they need and brings it to wherever. And there's huge parts where they don't even allow people in unless it's a mechanic. And you got the same thing. You can go back further really in history and start looking at especially American and Japanese car making companies. They basically have drones that work on their line to build these cars, and it's cost people jobs, but it's also made the job a lot safer and more efficient. And then you've got things like autonomous cars, and you keep going. So the whole drone concept is exactly that. I think where it's going to help society in general is it's going to help get rid of these drone jobs, where we no longer would need maybe the what do they call them? The migrant workers that go around to pick crops. That's a really menial job. Those people could probably use their human intelligence and skills for something more, advanced than picking strawberries or whatever it is. And it's the same thing in a plant picking a box off a shelf. We can have a robot that does it. Same thing with dropping a box off at a house. Do we need a mailman to do it? Or could we set up an automated vehicle or a drone that flies or whatever? So I think I agree with Christian. I think it is a wave technology. I think it's something that's going to make major differences in the way that services and functionality works in general.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think we'll have eventually. Go ahead, Christian.
Well, I just think that we're in the era of stopgap technologies is not the right word, but like that tech that's like we all know it was always within the realm, and we're just starting to reach for it. And some of it's a little sci-fi, but I think that come 2030, a lot of this stuff is gonna like take that big next step. So I think a lot of this is almost like the really kind of, I see it as the vaporware. For example, this is, the definition of what I call a stopgap technology, Google Glass, where we're now in this era of wearable technology. A lot of companies are trying to get into this space, Microsoft, Samsung, Google, you name it, and really, what actually is wearable technology, right? Honestly, I don't think if people had the choice between something like this and contact lenses that let them browse the internet with their eyes closed, I think we would be talking about the latter. But the point I'm trying to make here is that I think that printing silicon on contact lenses, we're not too far away from that type of wearable technology, so to speak. But this is the stopgap we're working and learning from until we get there, and until those things get into kind of a price affordability range. Drones are the same thing, although I haven't really decided what the natural evolution of a drone is yet. I'll get back to you on that. But this again, I think through, I would say at least till 2020, we're going to see a lot of these types of new markets open up in these areas that are going to be very kind of experimental in nature. On the other converse side of that, we see big technology improvements to things that have been around for a long time, like our space program. The SpaceX just announced the new Dragon 2 capsule, which brings a lot of improvements to how we do space flight and efficiency in the actual energy consumption involved with doing space flight. And that's something we've been doing for a long time, right? So I think that we're definitely in an interim phase of technology for these types of hardware-based things. I think on the software side, though, we're seeing a lot of very rapid progressions with the internet. Obviously, you have your buzzwords in cybersecurity, big data. I'm now getting really sucked into this idea of software-defined networking and what that means for me, because it's part of what I do at work. So there's just a lot of interim tech that I think is going to get us in a really cool place in the mid-2020s.
I agree, and I think we're really on a good path, and there is a lot of that stopgap going on, and we're definitely moving toward, one of the big things that's helping us or is going to help move is if you look into nanotechnology at all, you can see right now the practical uses for nanotech is putting special things into paint, or to make it more porous, or that your kids can draw on it and erase it, and or chemicals in fabrics and things like that is where we're currently actually using nanotech for. But as far as what's being researched, it's kind of the stuff that like exactly what you're talking about. It's huge advances in batteries, huge advances in being able to put circuitry into minuscule things like a contact lens. So that's kind of what's going to make that next step, I think, is nanotechnology kind of needs to catch up with our thoughts and ideas and wishes for technology. I think would be a big step up.
Yeah, pretty exciting. Some very exciting stuff coming ahead. And I just think of, we've been printing the stuff for a very long time, and there's some very interesting technology that's of embedding things in other things using this idea of printing.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's, you think about printing even something, like this on my shirt here, this Gallup word on my shirt could have stuff inside of it that would do stuff for me at that very, very thin, very micro or nano level, as you say. And so it's not just ink. It includes a lot of stuff. We talked about, Microsoft on their on the Surface key or type covers, those circuits are actually just printed on there. That's not. I mean, that's how they get that so thin, is they print the circuits using a certain kind of paint, then layer that over the top, and that becomes the circuit. And so you take that to that's kind of a big level. You can take that to even a smaller one. So. Some very interesting stuff coming, guys. We are at the end. I like to try and keep these about an hour and 20 minutes.
Okay.
And this has been awesome, John. I appreciate
absolutely.
you taking some time to come on and chat with us. Certainly, if I asked you to come back on again, would you? Would that be all right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Feel free to call me or shoot me an email. I'll definitely come on. We can talk whatever you want.
Be great to have you back on and talk some more fun stuff. We'll have to save maybe some of the hardcore stuff for the other side on Cyber Frontiers.
Sure, I'll come on that one too if you want. Absolutely.
Some of that stuff. I let Christian kind of pick and choose. That's his show, so I let him kind of pick and choose. This is mine.
Well, Christian,
that his.
Yep. If you want me on there, I'll get on there.
Perfect.
Good to know.
Good to have. Christian, we've got Cyber Frontiers maybe coming up here in the next week or so. So
yep.
If you're listening live or if you're listening to the recorded, and we'll remind you again, we'd love to have you subscribe to Cyber Frontiers. It's not going to come automatically to you anymore if you've been part of the Home Gadget Geek or Home Tech before that feed and you were getting that automatically. Nobody complained, so I imagine you guys liked it. You'll have to get that feed now over at theaverageguy.tv, and we have a brand new feed. Christian, you want to add something to that?
Well, yeah, just it would be great if you picked it up. We're going to have some really cool guests on in the next couple of weeks. I've been able to line up some really top-notch people in the field that are the domain experts in the tri-state area on these some of these topics. So you could be tuning into some really awesome conversations with some of the best of the best. So
yeah,
looking forward to getting that going.
Very cool. And I don't normally say this, but this would be a good one to share with somebody. And we don't want you. We don't make these podcasts so that it's for popularity reasons. We do it, one, because we love to do these, right? I mean, we love to get on and talk about these kinds of things. It's just fun for us. It's fun, I hope, and we've got a handful of folks join us live tonight. I know we get great feedback from you guys directly in the chat room, and so I know you guys find it interesting because you keep coming back live each Thursday night, and there's other things you could be doing on Thursday night, so I appreciate doing that. But we do have some really good stuff coming up, and I think some really smart stuff coming up, and I'd love to have you share that. So think about that, Cyber Frontiers, maybe the security expert in your business, in your job, whatever. Just share it. Say, hey, I've been listening to this podcast. I think you should give it a try, and head them over to theaverageguy.tv. And if the average guy thing gets in the way, we have a link called cyberfrontiers.info. So just go to cyberfrontiers, all one word, .info. That'll be better. And Christian, I'm glad you reminded me of that, because I bought that URL, we set it up, and then it went right out of my mind. And
Jim buys new toys and then puts them in his toy box and forgets.
He reminded me, hey, does cyberfrontiers.info, so INFO, cyberfrontiers.info, does that work still? And I'm like, I don't know. I tried it. Sure enough, takes you back to the link. So if you want to share that, that might be an easier way for you to share that with your cybersecurity friends at work. We'd love to have you come out, and that'll take you right to the feed for Cyber Frontiers. And then if you're listening on iTunes, I haven't asked for this in a long time. I'd love a review. We haven't had anybody give us a review since I think November of 2013. Or even later back than that. And not many of you, I know a lot of you guys get them through podcatchers and such, but if you do use iTunes, it'd be great to get a review for the new Home Gadget Geeks. That will help us in our iTunes ranking and such. And so, again, it's not all about the numbers. I like engaged listeners, and I know I've got the best engaged listeners on the planet. We don't go for the gimmicks or the gadgets or whatever those kinds of things some of the other podcasts do, or all the advertising. We just try to have fun out there and get it done. Speaking of having fun, one more reminder, we're getting together for the Home Server Show meetup in Indianapolis, September 20th. This will be number 4, I think, in the scheme of things. The last 3 have just been dynamite, and so if you're anywhere near the Indianapolis area, and I'm driving 10 hours, so if you can't, and John, if you're welcome to come with me if you want. I could use a ride if you want to head out to Indy for the
If
weekend.
my wife
But
would let me.
yeah, that's fine. No, I'm just kidding. But I do expect if you're anywhere within 10 hours. Christian, how far? We figured that out last year, right? How far is that for you?
Yeah, I think it's also about 10.
Yeah, we did get a request in the Home Server Show forums for you to show up and speak. I saw that come through today. They're like, well, maybe if Christian could come and give a security, kind of thing. I'm like, well, I'll have to get Christian out there somehow. September 20th, Northern Indianapolis, and all the details for that will be in the show notes. Just head out to thehomeservershow.com, jump in the forums, and you can search for Meetup 2014. It'll be great. Only 55 slots this year. We're gonna cap it just because it got too big on us last year, and we've already, I think, 10 or 12 or have already been sold. So you want to head out there. $20, not bad. Just help Dave cover the cost. He paid $1,000 just for lunch last year, and so we want to make sure we cover some of those costs. And we'd love to have you join us out there. That'll do it for another Home Gadget Geeks. Great conversation tonight, guys. Thank you both, John and Christian, for coming out. We'll do it again on next Thursday. Every Thursday we're out here, 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 Central. I said that backwards a couple of shows ago, and now I have to check myself every time. Here at theaverageguy.tv/live. Both of you stay around for the post show. Remember, you can't get the post show unless you come out to the live show. We've got a great audience now kind of joining us every Thursday live. We'd love to have you do that as well if you can do that. Just come out to theaverageguy.tv/live and we'll have you out. We'll do it all again next week. I have no idea who's up next week, but I know it'll be good. Come back out next week. Thanks for listening, everybody.